Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something huge that's shifting under our feet in global business. Seriously, if you're involved with a startup or maybe working in international policy, um, the way you learn to go global even 10 years back, it's basically useless now.
Yeah, it really is. We're seeing this complete overhaul in how startups scale across borders.
Mm,
It's driven by, technology accelerating like crazy, think AI, but also, let's be honest, a whole lot of geopolitical chaos.
right. And the traditional thinking, the research in international entrepreneurship, or IE as we'll probably call it, it's just not keeping up, is it?
Not really. Those older models, they were built around physical stuff, tangible assets, and assumed markets were pretty stable. They just don't work for today's startups, especially those from advanced economies. They're often asset light, super fast,
Yeah.
different beasts entirely.
Okay, so our mission today is to give you a kind of roadmap for this new world. We're diving into recent research, looking at four really critical shifts. We're using this handy acronym, DEFS. That's digitization, ecosystems, fracture, and sustainability.
And maybe the biggest takeaway right up front, these DEFS forces are completely rewriting what international success even means. We're shifting away from that old idea of IE just being about finding a stable market opportunity. That view is too static.
Okay, so if it's not opportunity, what is it?
It's becoming much more about connectivity. It's dynamic.
Connectivity. What does that mean in practice for, say, a founder?
Well, it means success isn't about building a big warehouse overseas anymore. It's really about how quickly and securely you can move the things that actually matter now. Talented people, venture capital, your unique ideas, your intellectual property. That ability to connect these things across borders, that's the real competitive edge today.
All right, let's dig into the DEFS framework. First up is D for digitization. Now, thinking back, technology used to be seen more as a helper, right? Like email, basic websites, tools to make things easier.
Exactly. They were framed as enablers. They helped startups get around limitations, like not having enough cash or existing networks.
Yeah.
You know, e-commerce helped you sell, email helped you talk. But the core strategy for expanding internationally, that was still often tied to physical things, machinery, maybe setting up a small facility, holding inventory. If you didn't have serious money, the barriers to entry were still pretty high.
But then things like AI, machine learning, big data,
Mhm.
they've really changed the game. It feels like the tech isn't just supporting the strategy anymore. Sometimes it is the strategy.
That's the absolute key shift. These digital technologies, they're not just tools. They're acting like, well, like intangible strategic agents. Think about it, AI, complex algorithms.
Yeah.
They're actively shaping how a company competes, how fast it grows, what decisions it makes. You can use AI tools now to analyze global trends, predict demand, optimize resources, all in real time, across the world. It's a massive leap in decision-making power.
So if you're, say, an advanced software startup, you don't necessarily need that huge upfront physical investment. Your value is...
Precisely. And that talent can be anywhere, right? With remote work, virtual teams, you can pull together specialists from Berlin, London, Bangalore, without needing offices everywhere. This lets you launch globally so much faster. Months, not years. Your core advantage becomes that intangible stuff, the knowledge, the IP.
Okay, but that must create huge headaches for policymakers then. If value isn't in factories, you can't just offer tax breaks for building them. What's the policy angle now?
Yeah, policy has to pivot hard towards protecting those intangible assets. That means really strong frameworks for intellectual property, seriously robust, and supporting things like algorithm development. Plus, and this is crucial, sorting out cross-border data governance. How does data flow safely and legally? If you can't move data easily, that whole digital advantage kind of falls apart. We need international agreements on data, not just on goods.
That connects really well to the next letter, E for ecosystems. So if digitization makes firms lighter, less asset heavy, ecosystems seem to explain how they get the resources and connections they still need, right?
That's a great way to put it. Traditionally, IE research really zoomed in on the individual founder or the firm itself. How risk tolerant is the founder? What assets does the firm own? FDI, joint ventures. Success was seen as something internal to the company.
Like a lone wolf battling the odds. But now it seems success hinges much more on the networks you can plug into quickly.
Exactly. We've shifted to what's called an ecosystem-centric view. And an ecosystem isn't just your local startup hub. It's this dynamic global mix of interconnected players, governments, VCs, universities, research labs, big digital platforms. They all work together, sometimes indirectly, to create value.
And the rise of huge digital platforms, Amazon, Alibaba, maybe specialized SaaS platforms, they must be a massive driver here.
Oh, absolutely. They're game changers. They let even small asset-light startups dip their toes into foreign markets, test things out, scale up using someone else's infrastructure. Think logistics, customer reach. You bypass a lot of those traditional costly entry barriers. It turns going global into more of a network play.
Okay, but hold on. If everyone's just relying on, say, Amazon's logistics or Apple's App Store, aren't you just trading old barriers for a new kind of dependency? Like platform risk.
That's a really sharp point, and yeah, it's a big debate. There are definitely new risks being at the mercy of platform rules, fees changing, but the upside, the speed, and the global reach that platforms offer, it's often immense. The ecosystem view tries to capture that complexity.
Yeah.
So for policymakers, it's about helping startups navigate that platform risk while still getting the benefits.
Which means policy can't just stay in its neat little boxes like trade policy here and innovation policy there.
Definitely not. Governments need that ecosystem mindset. They should be investing in shared infrastructure, maybe global accelerator programs, access to cloud services, AI tools, things that actively connect their local startups to global partners. And again, getting those digital trade rules and IP protections harmonized across borders is key for these platform strategies to actually work.
Okay, we've talked speed, digital tools, networks. Now for the spanner in the works, F for fracture. For a long time, the assumption in international business was basically that markets would keep opening up, right? Liberalization, falling tariffs, common rules.
Yeah, that was the dream, or at least the prevailing trend. Market contestability, the idea that markets were generally open to compete in, was sort of taken for granted.
But that assumption feels pretty shaky now.
It is. We're undeniably in an era of fractured geopolitics. You've got major power rivalries like the US and China, rising protectionism, nationalism, and things like techno-nationalism countries demanding data stays local, or blocking certain technologies like China's Great Firewall. It's carving up the global market into distinct blocks with different rules.
And that's not just an abstract political thing. It hits startups directly, doesn't it? Affects their bottom line, maybe even survival.
Absolutely. It injects huge uncertainty, cost, and risk. Suddenly, that one-size-fits-all global product might not work. You've got to navigate wildly different regulations, shifting standards, maybe sudden tariffs. It makes it harder to move those key things that you talked about, ideas, IP, even people. So policy now has to be designed for a world that's contested, not uniformly open.
So what can governments actually do about that beyond just, complaining about trade disputes?
Well, a key role becomes providing resilience. Think of it as a public good. One way is equipping startups with better intelligence, maybe government-backed analysis or tools to understand and predict these shifting political and regulatory landscapes, geopolitical risk dashboards, maybe.
Yeah.
The other big thing is actively incentivizing diversification. Don't put all your eggs in one market basket or rely on a single supply chain source. Spread the risk.
So it's not just about encouraging firms to go international, but guiding them on how to do it resiliently in this fractured world.
Exactly. And maybe integrating things like political risk insurance or more active diplomatic support into the standard toolkit for helping businesses go abroad. If a startup wants to enter a market that's high growth but politically tricky, government support needs to be smarter, maybe facilitating co-production deals or having channels ready to smooth over political bumps.
All right, that brings us to the final letter in DEES, S for sustainability. Historically, when we talked about startups going global, the focus was mostly on survival, getting big fast, making money, environmental stuff, social impact. That felt secondary.
Yeah, it was often treated as just compliance.
Yeah.
A box-ticking exercise, things you had to do, not things that were core to your strategy. The big shift now is realizing that truly sustainable global scaling means weaving environmental, social, and governance ESG factors right into the core of your international plans. It's not an add-on, it's integral.
And this isn't just about doing good, is it? There's a business case here, too. Competitive advantage, market access.
Definitely. It's both risk mitigation and a source of competitive edge. If you build ESG into your model from the start, you might avoid future regulatory headaches. Plus, certain markets, especially places like the EU, are increasingly demanding it. Strong ESG performance can actually unlock access to capital and customers. Startups that get this right can build long-term value and legitimacy in a way that older, more resource-heavy companies might struggle with.
So how do governments encourage this? How do they bake sustainability into policy?
Policies across the board, trade, investment, innovation, need to be actively aligned with ESG goals. It can't be siloed. This could mean things like offering targeted financing, green funds, specifically for sustainable ventures going international, or building stronger sustainability clauses into trade agreements, and actively supporting the adoption of clean tech, circular economy models, sustainable supply chains. Basically making sustainability a core part of the support structure, not an afterthought.
Okay, so we've walked through D, E, F, and S: digitization, ecosystems, fracture, sustainability. When you put all these pieces together, the speed of D and E bumping up against the friction of F with the added layer of S, you can really see why that old definition of international entrepreneurship just doesn't cut it anymore.
Exactly. That classic opportunity-based definition, which goes back decades, it was sort of passive. The idea was the entrepreneur mainly spots and then exploits an existing gap or opportunity. But it feels too static, too linear now. It doesn't really capture the sheer speed, the intense risk, or how resources actually get pulled together in today's world, especially for knowledge-based startups.
Right, today's startups seem much more active, almost creating their own context through connections.
That's precisely where this idea of a connectivity-based view comes in. It's much more dynamic, more relational. It focuses on how key resources, again, ideas, money, IP, skilled people, are actively circulated and moved across borders, across different institutions. IE isn't just about finding a niche. It's this ongoing process of co-creation. And the connectivity itself, the ability to build and use those links, becomes a crucial strategic resource.
So instead of an old school firm using foreign direct investment to buy, say, a factory overseas, a modern startup might use platforms and virtual teams to tap into specialized knowledge or talent pools anywhere in the world. That's a fundamentally different way of operating.
It really is. This connectivity model embraces the fluid nature of the global economy. There's this great analogy sometimes used to thinking of migrant entrepreneurs as the new Argonauts. They use their personal mobility, their ability to be embedded in multiple places, to connect different worlds, different knowledge bases, and spark new ventures across borders. Their value lies in bridging those gaps, navigating the fractures. That fluidity is key.
So it sounds like the big takeaway for anyone listening is that your competitive advantage might not be your product itself or your physical scale, but rather your company's ability to dynamically build and maintain the right connections to global talent, knowledge, funding, wherever they happen to be.
I think that sums it up perfectly. And the challenge for policy is to enable that connectivity, protect the vital IP flowing through it, and provide the stability needed to navigate the fractures.
What really strikes me is the gap between how these modern, often asset-light, digitally savvy startups actually operate in these complex, sometimes fragmented global ecosystems, and the policies we still have, which often seem stuck, assuming physical goods and stable markets are the default. Policy needs a serious update.
Absolutely. And this complex new reality opens up some really fascinating questions for the future, too. We've talked about how digitization enables connections, but also how geopolitics creates fractures, especially things like techno-nationalism. So here's a final thought, maybe something for you to mull over. To what extent can the very tools of digitization, things like AI, maybe blockchain, sophisticated virtual networks, actually be used to counteract or mitigate the effects of that geopolitical fracture? Could technology help keep entrepreneurial ecosystems connected and resilient, even when political forces are trying to pull them apart?
That's a really powerful question for the future, a fascinating place to leave it. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.